These are the key building blocks. And looking at capital market infrastructure, I see three highly relevant areas that most likely will change. This is the securities market, this is the asset servicing, and this is the derivative market. In fact, we already have live platforms purely running on DLT for futures. And to make that capital market work, we're going to introduce three ledgers, distributed ledgers that actually do nothing else than recording in a distributed system ownership of different assets in that network. One for assets, one for cash, because we're not using CBDC in that network. We rather issue our own cash representation, and a ledger or registry to keep records of derivatives. And these three areas will be affected by DLT, and this is what we need to build. For the securities market, you can see that now stakeholders interacting with each other using DLT, they have to operate nodes. That means they're directly joining that network in order to send signed transactions and interact with that network. Also, I said it, the exchange is highly important. The exchange will still be the marketplace for negotiating transactions prices. But instead of sending a settlement instruction, the exchange could operate a node and directly send signed transactions to update the ledger to that network, broadcast it. By introducing those two registries, and that could also be, for example, Ethereum, right? The CSD as the centralized bookkeeper that ensures ownership and records ownership will become obsolete. In fact, we're replacing that role through DLT. And also, because we are not clearing and settling cash transactions in that network through DVP, but rather through an atomic swap where we simultaneously swap asset versus cash. And this is something that the smart contract does. In fact, this is something that the program security does, right? By introducing that and using that, we're also eliminating the CCP in that. And this is something that could affect the securities market as it operates today. For asset servicing, you, for example, have dependent on the jurisdiction transfer agents, and they do a similar job to the CSD just for mutual fund shares. They keep the registry of ownership for mutual funds. And of course, that could also be performed by the blockchain, right? As a registry. Also, in fact, if we want to go a little bit further, you could argue that the custodian performing the role of safekeeping assets could be also replaced by a smart contract. Just imagine that all assets will be tokenized. Then, in fact, the safekeeping of those tokenized assets could be done by a smart contract. You don't need an entity to do that. It could be done by technology. And then also smart oracles could provide NAVs, right? And allow those reporting to be used in smart contracts. And then, of course, a very interesting market, the derivative market, where you have specific contracts such as futures, right? And margin calls, for example, or managing the collateral for that could be also performed by smart contracts. That means the collateral won't be managed by a CCP, for example, but rather by a smart contract. And we already have platforms such as Synthetics that provide that functionalities and prove that within a limited scope, of course, this is already reality. Then prices, reference prices for futures, for example, or for any derivative, they could be incepted into that network, into that infrastructure by smart oracles. Also here we have providers such as Chainlink that do exactly that. They bridge the traditional world with the blockchain world. And this is also something where we expect a lot of changes and where we currently see that the building blocks are being introduced and being provided by especially institutions. So just looking at the overall picture, you could see that the way of interaction between capital market participants will change. Also, the entire technology stack will change. They won't be reconciling information in a sequential way, but rather through operating a node, which allows them to send and receive transactions. They will be interacting with each other. And these are the building blocks that are currently being built. And also just looking at recent regulation, I believe that this is something that could become reality in the next couple of years.